The Last Monsoon. Some storms arrive with thunder. Others arrive in complete silence. No one notices them at first. Not until the world around them begins to change. My name is Satya. For the past 5 years, I had worked as a property manager at Skyview Heights, one of the most luxurious residential communities in the city. Every day followed the same routine: unlock the office, greet the residents, answer maintenance calls, solve small problems, then go home. It wasn't exciting, but it was peaceful. At least, it used to be. That week, the rain never stopped. Every morning, thick gray clouds covered the sky before sunrise. By afternoon, the roads glistened under endless sheets of rain. By evening, the city looked as though it had forgotten what sunshine felt like. The phone inside our office rang nonstop. One resident complained about a leaking ceiling. Another reported water collecting in the basement. Someone else said the garden pathways had turned into small streams. To everyone else, it was simply another difficult monsoon season. But I couldn't shake the feeling that something was different. One afternoon, during my routine inspection, I stopped beside the community's digital rain gauge. The number on the screen made me freeze. I blinked, then looked again. The rainfall had already reached a level that usually took an entire day. But it wasn't even noon. For a moment, I convinced myself the machine must be malfunctioning. Before I could investigate further, Rahul, our maintenance engineer, hurried toward me. His raincoat was soaked. His boots were covered in mud. His breathing was heavy. "I've inspected every drainage line," he said. "They're all working." I frowned. "Then why is the water rising so quickly?" Rahul slowly looked toward the dark sky. "I don't think the drains are the problem. They just can't keep up anymore." His words stayed with me. Back inside the office, I opened the security cameras connected to the underground parking garage. The screen showed something I had never seen before. Water was already spreading across the basement floor. Cars sat motionless as ripples slowly surrounded their tires. It was happening far earlier than it ever should have. A strange feeling settled deep inside my chest. Not fear, not yet, just uneasiness. As I continued staring at the monitors, the office door quietly opened. An elderly man walked inside, holding an old umbrella. His clothes were wet from the rain, but his expression remained calm. Without saying much, he placed a waterproof notebook on my desk. I looked at him, confused. "Sir, did you forget this?" He smiled gently. "No." "It's for you." I looked even more puzzled. "For me?" He nodded. "I spent 30 years studying rainfall and flood control. People ignored the warning signs then. They're ignoring them now." He looked directly into my eyes. "When people finally understand what's happening, it will already be too late." Before I could ask another question, he turned around and disappeared into the rain. The office suddenly felt much quieter. Curiosity got the better of me. I opened the notebook. Inside were pages filled with handwritten rainfall records dating back more than 3 decades. Every major storm, every flood, every unusual weather pattern, carefully documented. Toward the final pages, one sentence stood out. "When the 7th rainfall record is broken, leave immediately." A cold shiver ran through my body. Trying to prove the notebook wrong, I opened the official weather department website. I compared the rainfall numbers. Once, twice, 3 times. They matched perfectly. The 7th record had been broken that very morning. Outside, thunder rolled across the city. Moments later, emergency weather alerts appeared on every office computer. The television in the waiting area interrupted its regular program with a weather bulletin. Most people barely reacted. One coworker laughed. "It's just another rainy week." Another shrugged. "It'll clear up by the weekend." I wanted to believe them. I truly did. But something deep inside me refused to let it go. As evening approached, residents gathered inside the lobby. Families stood near the glass entrance, watching rainwater rush across the streets outside. Children pressed their hands against the windows. Parents whispered to one another. The security guards struggled to keep the flood barriers in place. One of them looked at me and shook his head. I've worked here for 15 years. I've never seen water rise this fast. I quietly told him to keep everyone informed. Then I walked back into the office. I sat alone at my desk. The notebook lay open beside my computer. The warning echoed inside my mind again and again, leave immediately. I didn't know if the old engineer was right, but I couldn't ignore the possibility that he was. That night, I made the hardest decision of my life. If I was wrong, I would lose my savings. If I was right, money would no longer matter. I opened my laptop and began making a list. Food, water, medicine, power, light, communication, warm clothing, emergency tools. Every item I could think of went onto that list. The rain continued tapping against my apartment window as I placed my first order. Then another, and another. Before long, my phone was filled with purchase confirmations. The next morning, I reported to work as if nothing had changed. I smiled at residents, answered phone calls, signed maintenance requests. No one noticed the growing storm inside my mind. The moment my shift ended, I drove across the city. My first stop was a wholesale grocery warehouse. Shopping carts overflowed with rice, canned food, pasta, cooking oil, bottled water, and dry groceries. Most customers bought only a few items. I bought enough to fill an entire vehicle. The cashier looked at me in surprise. "Hosting a very big family gathering?" I smiled politely. "You could say that." By the time I reached the parking lot, rainwater had already covered my shoes. It wasn't even forecast to rain that heavily. Yet the clouds seemed determined to empty everything they carried. The following evening, I visited another store. This time, batteries, flashlights, rechargeable lanterns, portable power stations, first aid supplies, waterproof containers. The store owner watched my trolley slowly fill. "You planning for a long camping trip?" I gave the same quiet smile. "I hope that's all it is." As the days passed, my routine became strangely divided. By day, I was still property manager Satya, professional, calm, helpful. By night, I became someone else. Someone preparing for a future no one else believed was coming. Every evening, another delivery arrived. Large cartons stacked one after another, bottled water, emergency food, medical kits, blankets, rain gear. Each box disappeared into storage before sunrise. I wanted no one asking questions. A few days later, I found myself standing at the highest point inside Skyview Heights. Hill Villa 09. It had remained vacant for years. As the property manager, I carried a master access key. For several minutes, I simply stared at the front door. My heartbeat echoed inside my ears. Then I unlocked it. The door opened with a slow creak. Dust floated through the quiet entrance hall. Sunlight struggled through rain-covered windows. The villa was silent, beautiful, strong. Room by room, I inspected the entire house. The spacious kitchen, the bedrooms, the storage areas, the rooftop terrace. Finally, the balcony. From there, the entire city stretched beneath me. Even through the heavy rain, I could see rivers overflowing their banks. Roads had begun disappearing beneath muddy water. Traffic barely moved. For the first time since finding the engineer's notebook, I felt a small sense of hope. If the flooding became worse, this house might survive. That evening, I carried my first boxes of supplies into the garage. One trip became 3. 3 became 10. Hour after hour, I organized everything carefully: food on one shelf, water on another, medical supplies within easy reach, backup lighting, emergency tools. Every item had its place. Every decision felt heavier than the last. Outside, the rain never stopped. Each morning, the rainfall records climbed even higher. Weather alerts became more frequent. News anchors stopped smiling. Emergency warnings interrupted regular television broadcasts several times each day. Yet the city continued as though nothing unusual was happening. Schools remained open, restaurants stayed busy, shopping malls welcomed customers. Life carried on, only the rain refused to leave. One evening, I stood alone on the balcony of Hill Villa 09. Cold wind brushed across my face. Lightning flashed beyond the distant skyline. For a single second, the entire valley lit up. I saw floodwater stretching farther than I had ever imagined. Entire roads had vanished beneath the rising water. The darkness returned just as quickly. My phone vibrated. Another emergency weather alert: heavy rainfall expected to continue for the next 72 hours. Residents are advised to avoid unnecessary travel. I lowered the phone slowly. The warning no longer felt like a prediction, it felt like the beginning. And deep inside, I knew there was no turning back.